Welcome to the Radiant Life with Tatiana. I am your host, and I'm obsessed with empowering you to live and create the best life possible. I'm a master mindset coach, breathwork facilitator, and a passionate little Latina who loves sharing the magic behind your subconscious mind and energetics. If you're looking to uplevel your mindset, learn all about spirituality and manifestation, and to be inspired in making a change to embody your best self, you are in the right place. My goal is for you to see and unlock your limitless potential, to have the tools to break free from the chains holding you back so you can create and live your most radiant life. I am so excited to have you here listening today. Now let's dive into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to the Radiant Life podcast. I'm excited to talk about healthy conflict resolutions today because let's be real, we're all human. We all experience conflicts in many areas of our life, and it's normal. And I want to share with you things that I've done and learned to help me improve conflicts with those in my life so that you can do the same. This episode was actually inspired when I was recording a weekend vlog for YouTube. If you watch the vlog, now you see the podcast that I'm making. I had a little conflict with my sister, and we got into like a little bickerment, argument, disagreement, and it was rough. I didn't have like the best day, but I was able to handle the conflict better than in my past, and we resolved it, we squashed it, things got better. And I even had a conflict with Evan yesterday, and we actually did something completely different. It was like life-changing. I'm going to share that story and how we went about it at the end. I want to kind of share through what I have planned for today, but definitely listen to the end because that is a great story, and how he handled it, so good. But like I said, we all have conflicts, and arguments or disagreements are going to come up, whether it's with our parents, our siblings, our coworkers, our friends, roommates, our partners, and it's okay. It happens, but it's more important to figure out how to handle them, because at least for me, I had horrible conflict resolution in my past. I would flip out. I would have this rage of anger come out and just not even think before I would speak. I would like lash out and say really harsh, mean, negative things. I would yell. I would scream. I even got physical at times, which I'm not proud to say. It was cray-cray status, and it was a lot. I had a lot of trapped emotions. I didn't know how to communicate the things that were going on in my mind, and I just resorted to many different things to handle the conflict, and it was horrible, and it would make things worse sometimes. And so over the years, I've obviously done lots of healing and lots of emotional regulation and communication improvement, and I'm better. I'm not perfect. I said I'm better. Right? I am still a human. I will still handle conflicts in ways that I know I could improve or I could do better. But let me tell you, it is a night and day difference. My mom can attest to that. Yes, I still get emotional. Yes, I may raise my voice. I do not get physical. And it's just way better. And it has drastically improved my relationships with my parents, completely different with my sister, my friends. Like, I don't really have conflicts or arguments with my friends now. Back in the day in high school and college, I would get in screaming matches with some of my girls sometimes. Like, oh my goodness, but you guys, I still love you. We're still all friends. At the end of the day, it's improved my relationships. And so I really believe this is an important thing to work on and to master because it's going to improve the rest of your life. So today's episode, I'm just diving deep into tips and tricks, some examples, some scenarios, a little script to help you improve your conflicts with those in your life. And, before I get into it, I like to say we're all going to experience like disagreements or conflicts. I try to live my life in general of like, is this going to matter in 72 hours? Or is this going to be a big deal on my deathbed? Am I going to remember this? And if it's not, okay, not a big deal. Don't stress about it. But we're humans and we have emotions, and some things we do need to handle. And if you're somebody who doesn't like conflicts, who doesn't like confrontation, there's ways to do it that are supportive and let your voice be heard and not have people walk over your boundaries. And so there's obviously going to be so many scenarios and there's only so many examples I can give. I give way more examples inside of my programs, but I really want you to walk away today with a lot of tips and tricks and just different perspective of how you can handle conflicts in your future. So like I said, relationships aren't perfect. We're going to all have disagreements and sometimes arguments, but it's the way we respond to them and we handle them that's going to support us in moving through them quicker, more efficiently, with more love, and in healthy ways where they don't consume us inside. So I want to start off with just sharing what poor conflict resolution really is. I'm going to call it out because I don't know about you. I definitely had a lot of poor behaviors for conflict resolution. Maybe you aren't aware of it, and this is just bringing awareness to it. Maybe you normalized it because maybe that's just how you grew up, and that's cool too. But I'm going to politely, with love, call the behaviors out of what is not acceptable. What's a poor conflict resolution to bring awareness to it so we can change. Okay, first things first, yelling. Like, yelling is going to get you nowhere. It's not. So, like, go screaming in pillow instead versus yelling at someone. Getting physical. It is not okay to put our hands on someone. Like, I know that. I knew that when it's happened. And it's typically was with my sister where, we're siblings, we roughhouse. Like, it has happened and it's only happened very few times. It's not okay. It's not how you treat human beings. Throwing stuff around the house, again, not okay. Whether it's a chair or a book or a glass cup, find ways to move that energy or that emotion, that anger in productive ways versus out on somebody else. So go punch a pillow, go stomp, go scream in a pillow versus lashing out on somebody else. And these are all things I've actually had to do to learn how to release when I felt anger or frustration pent up versus projecting it onto somebody. It's not acceptable. The complete opposite side of the spectrum that is not good conflict resolution is also not communicating or shutting down. Maybe you're somebody that just like leaves the room or leaves the house with no explanation and you come back hours later and you're like acting like everything's fine. You sweep everything under the rug. No, that's avoidant. That's not good either. And maybe it's because you don't like to have conflicts or you don't like confrontation. I get that. However, there's better ways to go about it. This is a good one. Bringing others into the situation. Maybe you call up your best friend or your sibling or you're like maybe a coworker when it's with your boss. Sometimes you got to leave people out of it and you got to deal with it with that other person. You can't gang up on somebody because at the end of the day, they weren't there and they won't know the truth. There's always his side, her side, or the truth. My grandmother always was like, do not air out your baggage to others because they will not know the truth. And there's a difference between bringing others into the situation in a healthy way of getting support versus just in a very bashing, be on my side type of resolution. It's not, you can only solve the conflict with the person, and you could get professional support, but you got to have that conversation with that person at the end of the day. So don't bring others into the situation if it's not needed. This next one's good. One of the worst ways to handle conflict is blasting on social media. Let me tell you a story really quick. I remember years ago, like 2019, I remember seeing this couple in the town that I grew up with or the town next to it. And this girl was like blasting her boyfriend, her baby daddy at the time, with statuses, like just airing out their baggage, how horrible he was. And it even got so bad to the point where there was a video that she shared. And I don't know if it was to prove her point. She like said that, he got physical. It wasn't obviously on camera. His mom ended up coming in. Like, it was a shit show. To then, they stayed together or they got back together. They've had another baby. And it's just like, bro, you literally just, aired out your entire baggage to everybody to see. Or, couples, I can't even imagine being parents. It's not easy. You've tinted that person's reputation, the relationship, the lack of respect. Like, no, it's nobody else's business. Social media isn't going to help you. You're just going to get more like people's opinions on stories. Do not blast on social media. I think that's a given. Clearly not. And the fact that I remember that story just shows like, oof, not a good look. And lastly, another poor conflict resolution is blaming each other or blaming the other person, especially if you're taking no responsibility. Because when you blame someone, you're constantly putting the power in their hands. And I like to tell everybody, when you point to somebody and you blame, if you're on YouTube, you can see what I'm talking about. But if you're listening, like, point the finger at someone, like you got a little water gun here. Pew, pew. You got 3 fingers pointing back at you. Do you know what that means? You have to take responsibility of something, or if not all of it. Maybe they disowned you. Maybe they said something really mean, X, Y, Z, but what can you be responsible for? How you react, what you say back, your actions, right? Like, take the responsibility and don't just blame the other person. So as I just said this list here, I want you to ask yourself, do you do any of these? Did you in the past? Do you still do them? Not to judge yourself, not to shame yourself, but just to get a benchmark of where you're at and what is no longer acceptable. I always like to ask the question, why? I like to know the root things because it brings just more awareness. It's not going to excuse it, but it brings awareness. So like, ask yourself, like, why do I act this way? Maybe it's because what you saw growing up. What did you see growing up? What was normalized? Did you see your parents getting in screaming matches? So that's just like how you think it's normal to communicate and handle conflicts with your partner, right? Or did you see your father just slam the door, drive for hours, maybe not see him until the next morning, and then him and your mom are like totally on good terms, and you're like, did you deal with it? Like, or are we just not going to talk about it? So maybe that's why you're avoidant, right? Because maybe you act like how your parents or whoever you saw growing up, or maybe you do the opposite because you don't want to be like them. Just kind of have an idea of like, what did you see? What did you normalize? Or maybe for you, you're like me, it's like, how did you get attention? I think there came a point in time where when I would raise my voice and kind of make a scene, that's when I was taken seriously and people would actually listen. And that probably created this belief and this syntax meaning of like, oh, when I do this, someone takes me seriously and then I'm heard. So then I continued that way and I would just go and go and go. So again, bring awareness to it. It's not to excuse anything. If you don't know and if you can't figure it out, that's also okay too, because at the end of the day, you get to make the decision to draw a line in the sand and to do something differently, despite what the past is. Because the past is in the past. It doesn't have to be how you handle things in the future. So let's just get into the meat of it. I have a list here of tips and ways to handle conflicts in a healthy way that I recommend you can start implementing one by one. I'm going to draw out some different scenarios. I have a step-by-step little process for those of you who like just steps, and giving you just some examples with some scripts here to really bring this different perspective in different ways to support you. Because like I said, like there's so many different scenarios, whether you're in a conflict with your coworker or your partner, your sibling, like you're going to handle it similarly, but also differently. And so I want you to feel well equipped. So here are ways to handle conflicts in a healthy way. First thing, take time to breathe and gather your thoughts before reacting, before having a conversation, right? Like we want to respond, not react. So great ways to do this is to take a walk, like walk away, take some time, cool off, compose yourself. Take 10 deep breaths, because when you're in a conflict or you're in an argument, your adrenaline is going, you're heightened, you're in fight or flight. So breathe in through your nose, and then exhale through the mouth. Slow your heart rate down. Breathing in through your nose is going to bring you back into that parasympathetic. It's going to bring you back into calm, cool, collected. Practice self-control here. You don't always have to give somebody a response in the middle of it. If you feel like those emotions and those thoughts are racing, gather yourself before going deeper into it. The second tip is great for maybe siblings, maybe friends, but really for partners. It's something that Evan and I implemented when we got back together and we were handling healthy conflict resolution, is having a code word, like purple duck. So what this is going to do is when things are getting heightened, if you say that or your partner says it, it's going to be like a pattern interrupt. Because what's happening is we so easily go into our subconscious automatic behavior. Sometimes we're to the point where we don't think, right? Like sometimes I would lash out and say really mean things without even thinking about it. So instead, this code word can be like a moment in time where you're like, you get shaken back up and you're like, oh, hold up, let me take a moment to go about this differently, handle it differently, and make a conscious choice to handle it in a different way, right? Next tip is speaking in a calm, relaxed tone. I know this feels obvious, but just a reminder, because it's not always what you say, it's also how you say it. So sometimes you need to take some time off to cool down to then be able to do that. That is for me because I have a lot of fire energy in me, and it's really easy for me to go to 0 to 100. So I need to sometimes take a step back to then be able to speak in a calm, neutral way. Fourth tip, this is a great one. Write out how you feel. Write out the issue, what happened. That way you can get everything out of your mind on paper. This is great for those of you who maybe avoid because you don't like confrontation or conflict. It makes you uncomfortable to speak up. Or maybe for those of us who have so much going on in our mind, and then in the moment we just kind of like, I don't know for you, but like I like sometimes freeze or I'll lash out. And so this is a great way to help you process things and get it out on paper. And what this can do is you can either practice saying it, you can give it to them and sit there while they read it to themselves, or maybe they read it out loud or you read it to them. It's a way for you to just improve your communication and how you can kind of deal with that. Next tip, I don't even know what number we're on. Moving the energy in healthy ways. So when there's conflict and argument, obviously there's emotions, but emotions are just energy in motion. So how can you move that energy in a productive way? Whether it's after the conversation was done, or maybe it's before you regroup. Before you regroup. So what is it? Do you need to go like on a run? Do you need to go punch a pillow? Maybe you have a punching bag in your garage. Maybe you just need to go on a walk and ground. How can you move that energy out so that you can either regroup, have a conversation, or just like change the state of the day? So like for me, when my sister and I had that little conflict that inspired this whole episode, I went on a walk and I grounded and I just like moved some energy out, and it helped me so much. But I had to take responsibility for that. And then we had the conversation. A few other tips. Pray, ask for spiritual support. Don't blame others. Take responsibility for what you can, which is how you respond, your words, your actions. Healthy ways is expressing how you feel. Share the emotions, share the thought process, right? Just be in open communication. Find a win-win solution. So what can be done moving forward for you guys to be on good terms? This is a huge one. Learn to actively listen to one another. It's so easy to interrupt someone. It's so easy to just hear what they're saying, like the words, but not actually hear and listen to them. So listen to them. So that way you can respond back in a more positive, better manner. So here's like a few scenarios, then I'm going to go into the steps. So like what happens if you're in the middle of the conflict, right? If you feel like you can't compose yourself or the other person, excuse yourself. And I wanted to bring this one up because sometimes like you don't want it to be where like if you excuse yourself that the person thinks you're just avoiding, or if they excuse them or they don't have the conscious awareness to excuse themselves, it can create more chaos, right? So like how can you take responsibility of the situation? So maybe it's you and you say, hey, I just need a moment to regroup here, catch my breath so that we can move through this situation more properly in a healthy way. Can you just give me 15, 30 minutes and then we can have a conversation, right? So they don't think you're just shutting down or avoiding. Or if it's them, you'd be like, hey, I'm noticing emotions are getting heightened right now and this is escalating. Let's both take some time to cool off, regroup, come back to this conversation in 30 minutes. You're taking responsibility of the situation. Because again, at the end of the day, when it comes to healthy conflict resolution, you can send this to your friend, you can send this to your partner, but you're not going to send it to the person like your coworker or whatnot, right? Like it has to be a conscious decision for you to take responsibility for what you're in control of. So I wanted to bring this up because maybe you get to be a great role model for them, to give them permission to take some time to cool off, and that you can have the conversation in 15 minutes and it doesn't have to be right now. Or maybe it's you taking the responsibility of your emotions so you don't react, but you're confirming to them that you're going to come back and you're not going to avoid maybe like you have in the past. You feel me? So if you also, another scenario is like if you didn't bring anything up, right? If there was an argument or a disagreement or something that just like rubbed you the wrong way, maybe it was with your roommates, but you didn't know how to bring it up because you didn't want it to come off bad, or maybe you don't like confrontation and you shut down and you're like, well, now how do I re-bring this back up? This actually happened. We had a post-retreat call with one of the ladies last week, and one of them, we had a post-retreat call yesterday with the ladies, and one of them was saying how last week, like, she just didn't bring something up to one of her roommates, and she was wondering, like, do I bring this up back now, or do I just like leave it? And it kind of really depends on the scope of things, right? But for her, I said, why don't you just bring it back up in a calm manner and just share how you felt? And you can just be like, hey, do you have a moment to talk? Something happened last week that just really bothered me and it made me upset, and I just wanted to share this with you just so that like I could clear the air. Whether you're aware of it or not, I just want to share. And then you can go into the conversation, because some people may not know, or some people may not bring it up if you're not going to bring it up. So it's okay to bring things up, and it doesn't mean it has to open the door to a whole conflict, but like also it ensures you're not being walked over, or you get a place to communicate boundaries. So just two simple scenarios that I really wanted to just emphasize here. But here's a little step-by-step, and then I'll go into examples for you on really moving through this, okay? So first step is you have to identify the issue. What's bothering you? What's making you upset? What's the situation, the conflict, the argument about? Is there a trigger, right? Is something really triggering you? So a trigger is a good opportunity to bring awareness to maybe some baggage that you may have, or the person, and you have to be mindful of how you bring that up to the person. So think about it this way. Like if you get super angry or super hurt in a really like emotionally charged way over a situation that like, if you kind of disassociated for a second, you'd be like, wait, why am I this emotionally charged over this? It probably means you have baggage, which means you're looking at this situation through the lens of past something, a past wound that hasn't been healed. So I'll try to give you two examples for relationships. Maybe your ex was an avoidant, and he would just shut down and he would ignore you, and he wouldn't have the conversation every single time, and it would just like make you not feel heard or seen, and like you hated it. Now you're dating somebody new, and he takes a moment to like recollect his thoughts. Maybe he didn't communicate it, but you just like lash out and you freak out, and you're like, how dare you just avoid the situation? You sweep things under the rug. Like you're just so annoyed that he's taking time to regroup. And he's like, what the heck are you talking about? You may be projecting unresolved wounds from your ex onto this new person. And I always say you can't bring past baggage from a relationship into a new one. You can't. You got to deal with it, because that's a different person. And they may be mirroring you behaviors for you to either learn something, to improve something, XYZ. So maybe instead of you like making the assumption, you do some forgiveness with your ex, you let it go, and you realize your new person isn't that person. And you just say, hey, I totally get next time if you need some moments to regroup. However, can you just communicate and just ensure with me that we were going to have a conversation about this and we can touch base in 15, 20 minutes? Right? Cool. So just an example of baggage, right? Like just being emotionally charged. Or here's another example. With a call that I had recently with someone. So one of her roommates had called her like a clean freak or a hoarder, like in a joking kind of, just a funny little way. And she was pissed, like so hurt, so upset, so not okay with it, which granted, you may be listening and be like, that would not bother me at all, right? Like, not that big of a deal. You don't have an emotional charge. You may also be someone be like, I wouldn't like to be called a name. You may have similar different values, morals, or boundaries. Cool. I get it. My point being is she was so emotionally charged over this name that doesn't have to have a sting, right? Like the word hoarder or clean freak, like doesn't have to have a strong sting. And so I brought that to awareness. I was like, I think you have some baggage here. Why? And like one of her baggage examples could have been that, people just mislabeled her and said mean things to her growing up, and it just hurt her. And so she had unresolved baggage around being mislabeled, being maybe teased, or just saying mean things to. And so like her roommate, when she said it in this nonchalant, casual, kind of joking way, like pushed her off the edge. So it wasn't the actual situation that her roommate just said that brought all this emotion up. It was things from the past that she hadn't fully healed from on top of it all, right? So my point being, going on a tangent, you have to identify what's bothering you, what's making you upset, and what's triggering you. And sometimes you also have to take responsibility to take a look at it and be like, okay, am I this emotionally charged over this specific situation? Or are there some things from the past that are unresolved that I need to take a look at and heal? Because clearly it's coming back up, right? If you know my story with Evan, like a lot of our conflicts before the breakup were because I had unresolved healing from my ex, my previous relationship. So you get the gist. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. Step 1, identify what's bothering you. Step 2 is optional, right? But I do recommend it, especially if you're in the beginning of choosing to improve your healthy communication, because this takes time and sometimes you need this, but it's to take time and space to process, to feel what you got to feel, to breathe it out before discussing it. So maybe here is, you say the code word, maybe you and your partner agree to that. Or maybe you just communicate like, I just need a moment here. Let's regroup. So take the space needed. And that's when you can really sit down. Maybe you journal, maybe you just sit and process what made you upset or what do you not agree about? How are you feeling? Identify the emotions. Maybe you identify what would make this situation better. How can there be a win-win before you go into the conversation? Maybe this is a time where you move the energy, you go on a walk, you go on a workout. Take the time and space. Then, like if you do this step 2 versus having the conversation in the moment of the conflict, which is like what happened with Evan and I last night that I'll share. Then when you bring it back up, just ask the person if it's a good time to discuss what just happened, right? Like in a neutral way. Like, hey, is now a good time? Hey, do you have a few minutes to come back to what happened so we can talk it out and clear the air, right? Or if you don't take the space, if you don't ask to have the conversation, you're just in it, you can just skip to step 4, which is let's have the conversation. Let's set the stage though. Let's share the issue and the conflict at hand. So share what's coming up. Why is it bothering you? How did it make you feel? So a good example that I like to do is like, hey, I want both of us to be heard right now and for us to come to a good conclusion and resolution to this so that we can improve our friendship or our relationship. So can I share with you how I felt, right? And then you can just say what you felt, what you need to say, and then you get to hear that other person. And then remember, practice active listening. You know, made me feel this way. I felt like you crossed the boundary. I don't really agree with what you said, X, Y, Z. Again, and then you got to listen to your partner. One big thing here is make sure whoever goes first doesn't matter. Sometimes it's a person that's more eager or like more emotionally charged. Let them go first. But let them go first without interrupting, or let yourself go first, right? Meaning, I'm somebody who sometimes interrupts when someone is expressing themselves. And so sometimes my sister has to communicate, please don't interrupt me, so I can fully actively listen. So you need to share how you're feeling, and then you need to actively listen with intention. Those are steps 4 and 5, depending on what order happens. Step 6 is explain or ask, what's the mutual like consensus? What's the solution for the problem? And how can we handle it in the future? Some conclusions may be to agree to disagree, whether because if it's an argument based on different opinions. Sometimes it's just sharing somebody a boundary or a way to communicate to you better, right? Find a win-win here, a way to improve in the future, and apologize, hug it out, forgive, and then you drop it, right? So that's like a step-by-step thing. Here's some examples. So with my sister and I was just like really upset. I'll start with there. And I was like, hey, I'm not okay with what's going on right now. I'm in a place like my emotions are heightened. I'm going to go on a walk. I'm going to regroup and let's talk about this later, right? You could also do a code word she knows code words, but we didn't. So I came back and I was like, hey, it's now a good time to talk about just like how I'm feeling, what happened. And she was like, yes. I felt like I was more eager to start the conversation. If you feel like that's the other partner, let them go first. If they go first, make sure they air it out fully. So my sister and I know this. We have really good, healthy conflict resolution. So I said everything I had to say. And then she was like, okay, do you have anything more you'd like to share? And I was like, no, I'm complete at this time. And she's like, cool. I'm going to share my side. Just like I let you speak. I would really appreciate it if you let me speak and didn't interrupt me before responding. This is huge because this comes into actively listening. I am the type of person who sometimes reacts or interrupts in response because I'm like, wait, I didn't mean it like that. Or no, like that's not how it went. Like I just want to cut it off. It can create more conflict, right? My sister's like, you always interrupt me. So Evan and Gabriella have had to be like, hey, Tots, let me air out before you respond. Please don't interrupt me. And it's not a rude thing to ask that request. Sometimes people just need that reminder. It's a reminder I need. I'm actively working on improving not interrupting to people, and sometimes it happens. So I really want to emphasize that. Don't try to not interrupt that other person, and ask to not be interrupted, right? What can you take responsibility for? That person you're having a conflict with isn't listening to this podcast episode to know not to interrupt you. You feel me? So whatever. So then she's like, okay, I heard what you had to say. When this happened, this is how I felt. I really didn't appreciate it. I also didn't mean it this way, like whatever our conflict was about. Where you're like, cool, we both feel heard, we both feel seen. And I said, moving forward, this is what I need from you. I would appreciate if you wouldn't do this and do this instead, right? Here's the win-win. How can we move forward? How can we handle this in the future and squash this beef? And that's what we did. We said, thank you, I love you, I forgive you, yada, yada, yada. I want to give you an example if you're having trouble with a coworker, right? So maybe they're making you feel unheard, you don't feel appreciated, that your voice doesn't matter, whatever that is. So let me just give you a little script that I got here. So imagine you walk up to a coworker and you're like, hey, Sarah, I would love to be able to just have a conversation with you about something. I know we've been feeling tension lately, and I believe it would be really supportive if we just talk this out constructively and we can just resolve it so that we can just have a healthy work environment. And maybe you take them off guard, maybe you're not. And they're like, yeah, of course, I think it's important to talk about issues. So, what's going on? And you can just say great, thank you. I really appreciate you being open and hearing me out and having a productive discussion about it. Let's just let each other share what they have to share without interruptions, and we can speak respectfully and hopefully find a win-win situation, a win-win solution. And then you go, I'll start. So I've been feeling really frustrated lately. I feel like my ideas are not being heard or valued during team meetings. I feel that I'm constantly being cut off. And it's just making me feel upset. I feel like my input doesn't matter, and I feel like there's a lack of respect here. And I want to share this with you because I'm not sure if those are your intentions. However, I don't feel like that's a fair way for team members to be treating each other. And I have some ideas of how we could find, a fair solution to this. But at first I just wanted to share how I felt. And then maybe that person's like, I'm really sorry. I never meant to interrupt you. Sometimes maybe I am so go. And it's nothing personal, whatever the reason, excuse is, it doesn't matter. And so maybe then you're like, okay, cool. How can we find a solution to this, right? Great. I know we have differences and we handle things differently. I think we both want to be heard, and I think we both want what's best for the team. Maybe we can find a way to balance things out efficiently and include everyone in case someone else is feeling this way. And maybe you're like, I had the idea that we could implement a rotation system. So everybody gets a chance to lead discussions, or everybody gets 5 minutes to share their ideas so they can feel heard and team. And they're like, yeah, I think that's a great idea. That will, prompt me to make sure I don't interrupt anybody or take over the meeting and XYZ. So I know it's a simple example, but it's coming from a place of respect and holding your boundaries, right, with a coworker, sharing how you feel, sharing that you didn't feel respected or valued or whatever feeling you're feeling, and that you want to have a healthy environment. You want to be able to feel heard, or you want to be able to feel safe communicating these things with someone and having a good team thing. Share that you want a win-win versus I'm not cool with you doing that. Don't ever do that again, right? No, explain to them how they can win, explain to them how you guys can go about it better. And you never know what progress you can make. I think it's really important. Maybe for a couple, you're maybe I would go to Evan and be like, hey, Ev, can we have a conversation about that little argument we just had? I really felt hurt when you spoke to me that way and you just forgot about our dinner plans, and then you just made plans without letting me know. And I just feel like you're prioritizing everybody else in front of me and you're not communicating with me effectively. And it's making me feel unheard or unloved, or my love tank's at a 0. I share what I got to share. And then Evan's like, okay, I hear you. Forgive me. We were really big on forgiveness versus I'm sorry. I see why you would feel that way. And I want you to know that spending time with you is a priority, whatever he would say. And I'm like, cool. Like I understand that. And I know those maybe weren't your intentions, but I wanted to share with you how I felt and why I got angry at you and let you know the explanation why I was giving you attitude and why we had this conflict. So what can we do moving forward, right? And we're like, maybe we can improve our communication, or maybe I can put things on my calendar. Again, I'm trying to guys just give you different scenarios here because of course it's going to be different when you talk to a coworker versus a sibling versus a partner. But at the end of the day, it takes practice and commitment, and it's about taking responsibility for what you can control, which is your words, your actions, your behaviors. And maybe if you are with a partner, you share them this episode, and maybe you guys make a commitment to improve your conflict resolutions. Instead of screaming at each other, you create a code word, whatever that looks like for you. And knowing that you can't control other people, and it may feel uncomfortable going to that coworker and having that conversation, or finally speaking up to maybe one of your close friends who you kind of just like let things sweep under the rug, but like finally you speak up. It's working a muscle that you've never worked before, right? Like I had a woman on the post-retreat call another woman who doesn't love confrontation, and she was able to set a boundary and handle a conflict like, hey, I didn't appreciate how you treated my clothes when I let you borrow them. You're asking to borrow my clothes again. I'm just like not cool with that. I don't want to have another conflict in the future. So I'm just going to set a boundary and like be like, no, you can't borrow my clothes. And she had fair ground. And one of the other girls was like, how did you have the courage and guts to say that to a friend? And she's like, she's done a lot of work with me in coaching, and it's working on letting your voice be heard. It's learning how to shift your perspective on confrontation or conflict. And it doesn't have to be this blowout or that you're never heard or letting people like walk all over you. But it's also like, can you just communicate effectively, respectfully how you're feeling and what's going on and how to move forward? And maybe that is setting a boundary. Maybe that is coming to an agreement that you guys will agree to disagree, or XYZ. It's totally different. Again, I go way more in depth with this in the programs based on the situation with scripts, and I can support you, based on where you're at, but hopefully this is giving you a good idea. So before I wrap this up, here's yesterday's little story time example that I wanted to share with you. And this is a great thing to do for relationships or for like-minded friendships. Because let me preface, some conflicts will arise based on someone's mood. Maybe it's, hashtag hormones, my lady friends, stress, having a hard day. And so sometimes we react not towards the person. It's just like, it's not you. I have so much going on, right? So yesterday, I felt like a lot. I got off the call. I was a little grouchy. I don't really know why. And like Evan and I, there was tension. There was bickerment. We were cooking dinner. And genuinely, I cannot remember what the actual problem was or the details. Probably because it was that insignificant. And when we dropped it. But we were having conflict. And it was a little like disagreement, argument. We had those pew pew words, like little jabs towards each other. Emotions were starting to get heightened, right? They would keep going to the level, to the point where I was like, you know what, just go eat your dinner by yourself. Like, I don't want to deal with you. Like, we're supposed to have date night. You're pissing me off. That's how I was feeling. Like, it was starting to arise. So he took a moment to walk away, went to the room, didn't even think about it. I thought he was going to the bathroom. I don't even know. Maybe he went to cool off. Maybe he didn't. I kept cooking. When he came back, he hugs me, and I'm like, I don't want to be hugged right now. But what he did was something he's never done before. He just started to pray over us. And he was just like, God, Holy Spirit within us, squash this right now. We know this isn't you. We know the devil is trying to get in between us and have us think different ways and put these thoughts into our minds. No, right now we surrender. We give it to you. I don't even know what else he was praying. He was just going, and I was just hugging him, melting into his chest. And let me tell you, the energy dropped immediately. Our egos surrendered. I felt so at peace with the problem. Because at the end of the day, it wasn't a big problem. And most problems, especially between couples, aren't a big deal. You just live together and are around each other so much. And we just God took it from us. He carried our burdens and we gave it to him. And it was so healing, so impactful. I had to share this with you because, wow, I have shared that with Evan before. Let's pray. Or in the middle of arguments, because no, like we don't need this. And I'm just here to encourage you, like, let that be a way to handle conflict better. Bring it to God. Pray. Surrender the issue to him. Ask him to, oh, this is one thing Evan, he's like, open our eyes to see from the other person's point of view. Like, ask him to open your eyes. Ask him to change your heart. There is power in prayer. The difference between life and death lies in the tongue. So instead of lashing out and saying something mean to someone, bring it into prayer. Surrender. Surrender your spirit. There is power. We know we're in spiritual warfare right now. Surrender, lay it to him. And let me tell you, like, obviously Evan and I are getting closer with our faith and our relationship with the Lord, and really bringing him at the foundation of our relationship. But I'm telling you, this is a game changer. And prior, I will say examples when it comes to conflicts, like I would like go in my room and be like, God, give me peace, give me patience, give me let go, release this anger. Like I would pray on that, but to pray with someone, like have someone pray, like it completely immediately got dropped. It's probably why I don't even remember what it was about, because it was taken from us. So I had to share that story. Oh man, it was sexy. I'm not gonna lie. Like I literally was like melting in his arms, and I looked up to him and I was like, oh, you're like a king. You're like a leader. Like you just took ownership of like the situation, and it was good. But yeah, I hope today's discussion really supported you in finding some good tips or some ways to communicate it, like calm manners. Like I would appreciate, I didn't like, or I didn't appreciate versus a blame. And I just hope it kind of gave you some more shifts and perspectives of ways to handle conflicts better in your future. If you are seeking more support on how to handle conflicts or conversations properly, learning how to set boundaries in a better, loving way. Boundaries don't have to be hard. I go way more in depth around that in both my programs, Radiant Relationships and Embrace Your Radiance. Obviously, Radiant Relationships is geared towards relationship-focused problems, so that is great if that's what you're struggling with. And EYR has a little bit more of like everything because it's about life and you. So you can learn more with the links below on my website. Both of those are now self-paced course programs. I haven't really shared that about Embrace Your Radiance. It's been a little bit more of like a back-end private offer that I have shared to a few people. But you can learn more about it now, and you get everything you need, like weekly modules, step-by-step guides, tips, tricks, workbooks to help you with the implementations, audios, books to read, meditation, journaling prompts, a hypnosis, like everything you need based on whatever it is you're at and what you're looking for. And you get lifetime access to it all because life is always going to continue to happen and you can come back to it. And it's going to really support you in the unprogramming, the unlearning of the old ways and relearning the new, whether it's with you and who you are in life or in relationships. And so yes, I haven't announced that, but EYR, there is that offer. It is over 50% off of what it used to be because the coaching right now is not being held. We'll see where things take us in the future, but there's so much value and it's jam-packed that I don't want it to just still be an offer, even though I'm just like figuring some things out. But learn more with the link below. If you have any questions, you can send me a DM or an email as always. And I hope you valued from this. Share this if you know somebody could value from it. And remember, it's baby steps. You're working a new muscle. You've never maybe done this before, or you just get better with time. And like I said, I'm not perfect. You just get better one step at a time. I appreciate you guys so much for listening, for being here. I know this was a longer episode. I hope you valued from it. And I will see you in the next one. I hope you have the most radiant day ever. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to share it with me and write an Apple iTunes review so I can keep the good stuff coming your way. If you aren't already following me, you can find me on Instagram at Tatiana_Kuto. Make sure to tag me in any posts that you share. I love and appreciate you so much and cannot wait to connect with you in the next episode. In the meantime, go out and radiate your light into the world.